Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're the show that takes a stack of fascinating sources and pulls out the key insights, really, to help you navigate your world a bit better.
That's right.
And today, we're plunging into something, well, incredibly personal, but also something everyone shares. Our inner world. Just think about it for a second. That constant, swirling stream of thoughts, feelings, sensations. It's just there all the time. From the moment you wake up, it's the background noise or maybe the main event of your whole day.
It really is the fabric of our existence, isn't it?
Totally. And, for many of us, especially if you feel like you have a particularly busy mind, that inner stream, it can feel less like a gentle brook and more like a raging river.
Yeah, exactly. A torrent, maybe. But anxiety is things you want, ideas that just flash by. It feels like it could just sweep you away sometimes.
Which leads us to the big question we're kind of tackling today. The mission for this deep dive, really. How well do we actually get this internal landscape? Is our consciousness this, single solid thing we often assume it is?
Or is it maybe something more dynamic, more fragmented, maybe even a bit chaotic?
Exactly. And we want to explore that, but also maybe teach you a bit about becoming a more, let's say, mindful observer of your own thoughts.
Right. Learning how to, metaphorically speaking, sit on the riverbank and just watch those thoughts float by without feeling like you have to jump in and get carried off by every single one.
Yeah, that's the goal.
So we're aiming to explore the science behind consciousness and also the forces, sometimes hidden, sometimes obvious, that really sculpt our inner experience. We'll be looking at neuroscience, psychology, even philosophy.
A real mix.
A real mix. Trying to unpack not just how our minds work, but what's actually driving our actions. And crucially, how we can maybe learn to navigate the conflicts that, let's face it, inevitably pop up inside us.
It's about getting a bit more understanding, maybe a bit more influence over the flow of your own internal river.
Precisely. Empowering you, the listener.
And for this journey, we've pulled together some really foundational texts, real cornerstones that give this rich, multi-layered view of the psyche. We'll be dipping into the collected works of C.G. Jung.
A giant in the field.
Absolutely. And the Principles of Psychology by William James, huge for understanding brain function and the nature of thought itself. He's actually going to be pretty central to our chat today.
His stream of thought idea is so relevant here.
Definitely. We've also got James Clear's Atomic Habits, Freud's Civilization and Its Discontents, Leon Festinger on Cognitive Dissonance, and a few others besides.
It's a great stack. The aim is to give you not just the what, but maybe somehow practical tools alongside the knowledge to become that mindful observer, to feel a bit more in charge of those internal currents.
Okay, so let's dive in. Section 1, the elusive nature of consciousness and the inner world.
Right.
Start with the big one, consciousness itself. It feels so basic, so thus. But when you try to actually define it, pin it down scientifically.
It's like trying to grab smoke, isn't it?
Totally. And historically, philosophers, religious thinkers, Kant, Hegel, you name it, they wrestled with it for centuries. Its nature, its role, but rarely landing on one solid definition.
No, absolutely not. And when psychology tried to become more, scientific, empirical, the early psychologists, they had a heck of a time trying to define it in a way they could actually measure.
Yeah.
So much so that particularly when behaviorism took hold, the sciences kind of dropped it for decades. They argued that self-reports, people just describing their inner states, weren't reliable, not scientifically valid.
Right, too subjective.
Exactly.
Right.
It's only more recently, maybe since the late 70s, work by people like Pope and Simmer, that there's been this renewed serious scientific interest, trying to find ways to study it, acknowledging it's undeniably there, even if it's tricky.
And what's really interesting now, especially for our focus today, is this idea of phenomenological primacy. That's Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's term.
Bit of a mouthful, but important.
Yeah. It basically means prioritizing the subjective experience, how things feel to us from the inside, treating our conscious experience as, let me get the quote, an internal event about which one does do directly what one wants to do.
So it's saying, look, your first-person feeling, your sense of I, that's the starting point, even while we try to figure out the mechanics underneath.
But that immediately brings up a question, doesn't it? If it's so subjective, so internal, how stable is it? We feel like this ain't me most days, but is that real or just a feeling?
That's a fantastic question, and it leads right into this huge debate. Is consciousness this one solid, unified thing? Or is it, well, more fragmented? Carl Jung, you mentioned him earlier, he had this incredibly vivid image for it. He said the psyche is Far from being a homogeneous unit, on the contrary, it is a boiling cauldron of contradictory impulses, inhibitions, and effects.
A boiling cauldron. Wow. That definitely resonates sometimes, doesn't it, when you feel pulled in all sorts of directions?
It really does. It's not some calm, predictable stream, in his view. It's turbulent, chaotic even, multiple currents pulling against each other constantly.
And he wasn't just being poetic. He actually argued that the unity of consciousness, what we think of as our personality, isn't a reality we possess. It's a desideratum.
A desideratum, meaning something we want or aim for, right? Not something we just have.
Exactly. It's something we desire, maybe something we strive to build or maintain. And he warned that this unity we want, it's constantly under threat from what he called alien powers, basically, intrusions from the unconscious.
So that feeling of being a stable self might actually be this ongoing, active effort to keep things together, to fight off these unconscious interruptions.
That makes sense.
And Jung was pretty emphatic that this wasn't just theory. He said, science demonstrated the lability and dissociability of consciousness more than half a century ago and proved it by experiment.
Lability and dissociability. So, unstable and capable of splitting apart.
That's it. It's not just about feeling a bit conflicted sometimes. He's suggesting our conscious plans, our intentions are continually disturbed and thwarted by these unconscious bits breaking through.
Like trying to steer a boat in that boiling cauldron. And suddenly these hidden currents just grab you and pull you off course, no matter how hard you paddle consciously.
Yeah, it really makes you question how much direct control we have over our moment-to-moment focus, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And this idea of flux, of things not being static, this brings us right back to William James. You mentioned his stream of thought idea.
Yes, a foundational concept. James, often called the father of American psychology, he saw this dynamic nature way back. He didn't see consciousness as a series of separate snapshots, but as this continuous flow.
Like a river.
Exactly like a river. And he was very aware of the hidden machinery underneath it all, the brain's work.
Right. In his big book, The Principles of Psychology, he suggests something like, however complex our train of thought is, the brain events happening alongside it have to be just as complex, a perfect match.
He talked about a neural machinery that offers a living counterpart for every shading, however fine, of the history of its owner's mind. So underneath the subjective feeling of the stream, there's this incredibly intricate physical stuff going on in the brain, processing everything.
Hardware running the software, sort of.
You could put it that way. And this was key to his principle of continuity. No mental event without a corresponding brain event. He famously said, no psychosis without neurosis, which, in the language of his time, basically meant no mental experience without something happening neurologically.
Okay, so it anchors our inner world firmly in our physical body. Our thoughts aren't just floating free.
Correct. But here's where it gets maybe a bit mind-bending and definitely relevant to that observer idea. A lot of this brain work, this neural machinery activity, happens completely outside our conscious awareness.
Okay. So if our inner world is a river, there are these huge, powerful currents moving deep below the surface that we don't even see or feel directly.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Think about Ivan Pavlov's work, famous for his dogs. But his conditioning experiments showed something profound about the brain. He found that significant synthesizing activity, like complex processing and joining ideas together, can happen in the cortex, the thinking part of the brain.
Yeah.
Even when those parts are technically inhibited, meaning they aren't actively firing in a way that creates conscious thought, they're quiet on the surface, but still working underneath.
Wow.
And this unconscious activity, it might not register consciously then, but it can later pop into our awareness as a link already formed, seeming to originate spontaneously.
So those aha moments, those ideas that just seem to appear out of nowhere, they might actually be the end product of this hidden assembly line in our brain, working away behind the scenes.
That's the implication. It totally reframes things like creativity or problem solving. It's not necessarily a sudden flash, but maybe the culmination of this ongoing, unseen cognitive processing, like those deep river currents finally causing a visible ripple on the surface.
So we're mostly just aware of the surface ripples, missing the powerful stuff underneath.
Often, yes. And James, again, he hits this point home with a really striking observation about the present moment of consciousness. He called it the darkest in the whole series.
The darkest, why?
Because, he said, nothing can be known about it till it be dead and gone. The moment you try to grab onto a thought, to inspect it, it's already passed. Our thoughts, he said, are perishing thoughts.
Perishing thoughts. Wow. Like trying to scoop up water from the river the second you close your hand, that specific bit of water is already downstream.
Exactly. It's a crucial idea for anyone trying to practice mindfulness or observe their thoughts. It highlights the absolute transience, the fleeting nature of conscious experience. You can't hold a thought.
So self-awareness isn't about capturing and analyzing each thought like a specimen.
Not in that sense. No, it's more about developing this fluid, moment-to-moment observation that accepts this impermanence. It's about watching the flow, witnessing it, without getting snagged on every single perishing thought as it goes by. Understanding that the present moment of awareness is inherently elusive.
That really sets the stage for learning to be that observer on the riverbank, doesn't it? Knowing you can't stop the river, you can't even hold on to the water, but you can watch it flow.
Precisely. It's a fundamental shift in perspective.
Okay, so moving into our second section, the driving forces, emotions, habits, and hidden influences. If our consciousness is this fleeting stream, maybe even a boiling cauldron, what's actually pushing it along? What gives the river its power, its direction?
Well, it turns out some of the most powerful forces are also the most, let's say, primal. Our emotions.
Oh, emotions.
James Clear, in Atomic Habits, puts it incredibly bluntly. He says, emotions drive behavior. Every decision is an emotional decision at some level.
Every decision, that feels strong.
It is strong. And he backs it up neurologically, explaining that the primary mode of the brain is to feel, the secondary mode is to think. Our gut reactions, our feelings, they often come before our rational analysis.
So that craving for a cookie or the urge to check your phone, the feeling hits first, then the action, and maybe then the thought process kicks in to justify it or plan around it.
That's the idea. Our brain's default isn't logic, it's feeling. Rationality is like the layer we add on top afterwards.
That really flips the script on how we usually think about ourselves.
You're right.
We like to think we're logical, making these careful choices.
We do, but Clear suggests that logic often follows the emotional wave. It doesn't create it. So if our consciousness is a river, our emotions are like those deep, powerful currents setting the main direction. Our rationality is more like the person in the boat, trying to steer within the current that's already flowing.
So to really understand why we're heading in a certain direction, why we do what we do, we need to tune into the feelings first, not just the story we tell ourselves about it later.
Exactly. It's a huge piece of self-awareness.
And then you add habits into that mix.
Oh, habits are enormous. Researchers figure that something like 40 to 50% of what we do each day isn't a conscious choice at all. It's habit.
Half our day on autopilot.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
These are, as Clear calls them, automatic choices that influence the conscious decisions that follow. Half your waking hours are essentially pre-programmed responses kicking in.
Wow. So much of our river is just flowing down these paths we've worn over time without even thinking about it.
That's a great way to put it. Cleary uses this analogy of habits being like an entrance ramp to a highway.
Yeah.
Once you're on that ramp, it's just easier to keep going down that road than it is to swerve off and try something new.
Like sitting through a movie you hate just because you started it.
Yeah.
Or keep scrolling on your phone even though you had to check it for just a second.
Exactly. Or finishing the snacks even when you're not hungry anymore. Those are habits pulling your conscious decisions along with them. They're like these strong, steady currents directing the flow without you actively paddling.
And the tricky part is, we often don't even notice we're doing it.
That's the real challenge. Maintaining awareness of what we are actually doing, as Clear says. It's why the downsides of bad habits can sneak up on us. We weren't really paying attention to the small, automatic choices piling up day after day.
So how do you fight that?
Yeah.
How do you notice the autopilot?
Well, Clear suggests something really simple but effective, a habit scorecard. Just literally list out your daily routines, waking up, brushing teeth, checking phone, coffee, commute, whatever, and mark each one as positive, plus, negative, or neutral.
Just listing them out.
Just the act of listing brings awareness. It forces you to actually see those automatic currents. It's like stepping out of the river for a moment, getting onto the bank, and actually looking at where it's flowing. That awareness is the first step to deciding if you want to change its course.
Okay, that makes sense. Awareness first. But beyond our own habits, our minds are also doing this constant internal dance to feel consistent, right? Even when things clash.
Yes. Leon Festinger and cognitive dissonance, a classic. He argued that dissonance, that uncomfortable feeling you get when you hold conflicting beliefs or when your actions don't match your beliefs, is basically a fundamental and unavoidable outcome of decision-making.
Unavoidable.
Pretty much. Anytime you choose between two things you like, say, two jobs or two potential partners, you automatically create dissonance because you have to reject something good. There's an internal clash. The currents are pushing against each other.
And our brain hates that feeling.
Hates it. So it immediately starts working to reduce the discomfort. Festinger found we do this in clever ways. One is by changing cognition about alternatives.
Really?
You basically pump up the positives of what you chose and downplay the good things about what you rejected.
Oh.
If you bought the practical car, you suddenly focus really hard on its fuel efficiency and reliability, while telling yourself the fancy features on the other car were probably unnecessary anyway.
You rewrite the story a bit to make your choice look better.
Exactly. Another way is establishing cognitive overlap, finding ways the chosen and unchosen things are actually similar, making the choice feel less like a stark etherer. The brain is desperate for harmony.
It's amazing how actively we do this, often unconsciously. Festinger actually showed this with data, didn't he?
He did. He talked about post-decision behavior, like people who just bought a new car are suddenly more likely to read advertisements for that exact car. Why? To reinforce their choice, to reduce any lingering dissonance.
And the flip side.
We actively avoid or reject information contrary to our existing beliefs. Think about studies showing how sports fans interpret a controversial call completely differently depending on which team they support, or how smokers might avoid articles about lung cancer. We build these little echo chambers to keep the internal friction low.
We curate our reality to feel consistent.
And we don't just do it alone. Festinger pointed out that social groups are a valuable resource for dissonance reduction. We seek out people who agree with us, who validate our choices and beliefs.
Safety in numbers.
Right. It adds consonant cognitive elements. More proof that we're right. This shapes who we talk to and what we talk about. It's another subtle current influencing our inner world, where our need to belong can steer our perceptions without us even realizing it.
Which flows perfectly into the whole idea of social and environmental conditioning. These external forces shaping our internal river.
Absolutely. James Clear touches on this too. The culture we live in determines which behaviors are attractive to us. And crucially, we have a strong desire to fit in and belong to the tribe.
We're social creatures.
Deeply. We imitate our family, our friends, the majority, the people we see as powerful or successful. Clear argues that one of the best ways to build a new habit is to join a group where that habit is the norm. The social gravity just pulls you along.
Because the normal behavior of the tribe often overpowers the desired behavior of the individual. Even if you want to do something different, if everyone around you is doing the opposite.
It's incredibly hard to swim against that current. We often rather be wrong with the crowd than right by ourselves. That pull to conform shapes our inner landscape profoundly, our values, our self-image, not just our actions.
Now, B.F. Skinner took this idea of environmental influence even further, didn't he? Almost radically so.
Oh, absolutely. And beyond freedom and dignity, Skinner really challenged the whole idea of us being driven by some innate human nature or internal capacities. He was a strict behaviorist.
So what did he think determined behavior?
Two things, basically. Our genetic endowment, our biology, and, crucially, the environmental circumstances to which, as an individual, he has been exposed. Full stop. No room for fuzzy internal states driving things.
That's pretty deterministic. It kind of sidelines free will, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Skinner believed our feeling of freedom is largely an illusion. Our behavior is shaped by our history of reinforcement and punishment within our environment. But the flip side of that for him was positive. If the environment shapes behavior, then you can change the environment to shape better behavior.
Okay, so it offers a path for change, just an external one. What did he say about punishment specifically? Does it work?
Not in the way people think. Skinner argued punishment doesn't just eliminate a behavior. What it really teaches is how to avoid the punishment.
Ah, okay. So you might stop doing the thing when the punisher is watching, but the urge is still there?
Exactly. Or you might develop maladaptive or neurotic ways to cope, or just avoid situations where punishment might happen altogether. You learn rules based on these punitive contingencies, rules specifically designed to dodge the negative consequences. The underlying drive isn't addressed, just redirected into avoidance.
So punishment creates these, like, countercurrents of fear and avoidance in the river, rather than genuinely changing the flow's source.
That's a good way to see it. And Skinner made this really fascinating, almost paradoxical observation. He said that those who object most violently to the manipulation of behavior nevertheless make the most vigorous efforts to manipulate minds.
What did he mean by that?
He meant that people get really upset about the idea of changing behavior directly. By altering the environment, they see it as controlling or coercive, a threat to freedom and dignity. But those same people often have no problem trying to change states of mind through persuasion, propaganda, education, therapy.
Ah, so manipulating thoughts and feelings is okay, but manipulating the external conditions that shape those thoughts and feelings is seen as bad.
That was his point. It highlights this weird tension in how we think about control. We seem more comfortable with influencing the invisible inner world than the visible outer one, even though, in his view, the outer one is the real driver.
That is a really interesting tension to think about. Okay, let's shift gears slightly. Section 3, navigating internal conflict and seeking meaning. We've talked about the currents, the forces, but what happens when they really clash? When the river becomes rapids, the internal conflict, the suffering.
Yeah, and the perhaps uncomfortable truth is that this struggle isn't an anomaly. It might be baked into the system. Sigmund Freud certainly thought so.
Right, civilization and its discontent.
That's your full title. Tuckles. Not exactly. Freud basically argued that a lot of our psychological problems, our neuroses, stem directly from the demands of civilization itself. Society forces us to suppress our basic drives, aggression, sexuality in the name of cultural ideals, and this privation, this holding back, makes us fundamentally discontented.
So civilization itself creates this tension.
That was his argument. He pointed to what he saw as a fundamental hostility of human beings to one another, a built-in aggressive instinct that's always threatening to tear society apart.
Okay.
So civilization has to clamp down on it. It restricts our sex lives, it gives us rules, and perhaps most famously, it gives us commandments like love thy neighbor as thyself.
Which Freud thought was
Impossible to keep.
given what he believed about innate human aggression. So we're stuck in this bind. Society demands something that goes against our nature, creating this constant underlying friction, like trying to force two powerful, opposing river currents into the same narrow channel. It's going to cause turbulence. That's a pretty bleak view of our social existence. And he linked this directly to guilt, didn't he?
Absolutely. He saw guilt developing in two stages. First, it's just fear of authority, fear of getting caught and punished externally. Simple enough.
Yeah.
But then it gets internalized. It becomes fear of the superego, that inner voice, the conscience, the internalized rules and parental figures.
Your own internal judge.
Exactly. And here's the rub. Giving up on your desires because you're scared of getting caught might bring peace. But giving up because your superego tells you you're bad. That, Freud said, leads to an enduring inner unhappiness, the tension generated by the consciousness of guilt. Because even if you don't act on the impulse, the superego knows you wanted to.
So the conflict just moves inside and keeps churning away, a dark undercurrent that never really goes away.
That was his view, a constant gnawing tension. And this kind of internal pressure, this unresolved conflict, can easily bubble up as anxiety, which then shapes how we see the world.
Like Viktor Frankl's idea of anticipatory anxiety.
Precisely. Frankl observed this in his patients, and of course in the extreme conditions of concentration camps. It's where your fear of something bad happening becomes so intense, so dominant in your stream of consciousness, that it actually helps bring about the very thing you fear.
A self-fulfilling prophecy fueled by anxiety.
Yes. The internal turmoil, the focus on the negative potential, literally steers you towards the rapids you are desperately trying to avoid. Your inner state shapes your outer reality.
So how do we deal with these powerful internal states, especially when they're rooted in something really deep like trauma? How do we become observers then when the current feels overwhelming?
That's a critical question. Bessel van der Kolk in The Body Keeps the Score provides some really crucial insights here. He explains that trauma doesn't just leave bad memories, it leaves memories that are split off and fragmented.
Fragmented? How so?
It means the different pieces of the experience, the raw emotions, the sounds, the images, the physical sensations, the thoughts, they don't get integrated into a normal narrative memory. Instead, they kind of take on a life of their own.
So they can just surge up unexpectedly.
Exactly. Triggered by something in the present, these fragments can make someone feel like they are literally reliving the traumatic event, even if they don't consciously connect the feeling to the past memory. It's like a part of the river has broken off and formed this intense, recurring whirlpool that keeps pulling them back in, disrupting the present flow.
That sounds terrifying. And he says trauma affects our sense of control.
Fundamentally, he says it robs you of the feeling that you are in charge of yourself. It diminishes what he terms self-leadership. You feel adrift, controlled by these overwhelming internal states.
So recovery isn't just about talking about it.
It's often much more than that. A core part of recovery, van der Kolk stresses, is reestablishing ownership of your body and your mind, of yourself. It's about learning, often through bodily awareness and regulation techniques, to manage those fragmented sensations and emotions without being completely overwhelmed.
Learning to navigate the whirlpool without getting sucked under. Finding ways to observe it from a place of relative safety.
That's a great way to put it. It's about slowly regaining mastery over that internal river, calming the storm.
And this process of facing the difficult, maybe even terrifying parts of ourselves. Jordan Peterson uses a striking metaphor for this, doesn't he? The alchemist.
Yes, in Maps of Meaning, he talks about the alchemist figure who dared to step outside the protective enclave of conformity. This person risked investigating parts of experience that were considered, taboo or demonic by the standards of their time.
Going into the unknown territory within.
Exactly. And Peterson says this required the abandonment or disorganization of the reigning individual and social worldview. You have to be willing to let go of your comfortable, familiar maps of reality to explore the uncharted, potentially scary depths of your own psyche, your own internal river, confronting what Jung might call the shadow.
That takes incredible courage. It's the ultimate journey of self-exploration, facing the dragons within.
It is. And often it's through confronting that darkness, that suffering, that we actually find meaning. This brings us back to Viktor Frankl,
Who famously said,
if life really has a meaning, there must be meaning in suffering. He believed that even in the most horrific circumstances, we retain the freedom to choose our attitude, to find meaning in our response to suffering. And sometimes that deep dissatisfaction, whether with society like Ford described or with profound personal loss, can paradoxically become the fertile ground where meaning takes root.
So the struggle itself, navigating those incredibly difficult currents, can be where we discover our purpose, our strength. It gives shape and direction to the river.
It absolutely can. And this search for meaning, this drive to become more whole, connects beautifully with Abraham Maslow's work on self-actualization.
Right, the hierarchy of needs leading up to becoming your best self.
Exactly. In Motivation and Personality, Maslow suggested that once our basic needs are met, safety, belonging, esteem, we are naturally released for self-actualization. We have these intrinsic growth tendencies pushing us towards fulfilling our potential.
Towards psychological freedom.
Yes, where your own true nature becomes the primary determinant of your actions, not just societal pressures or unconscious drives or fear. It's about aligning your life's river with its authentic source, becoming the captain of your own vessel.
But it's not always straightforward, is it?
Yeah.
Even if our basic needs are met.
No, definitely not. Ernest Becker, reflecting on Maslow, pointed out something fascinating. We often suffer from a fear of one's own greatness, an evasion of one's destiny.
Fear of success.
In a way, fear of the potential, fear of the responsibility that comes with truly stepping into your full capabilities. It can be daunting, and this fear can block that process Jung called individuation, the lifelong journey towards integrating all parts of ourselves, conscious and unconscious, into a coherent whole.
Jung saw this integration as the goal, right? Becoming whole.
Yes, he used symbols like the child motif to represent this potential for growth and renewal. The child signifies an anticipation of future developments, something that paves the way for a future change of personality. It's a symbol that unites the opposites, a bringer of healing, making us whole. The ultimate goal isn't just conscious control, but the synthesis of the self, achieving a wholeness that transcends consciousness, integrating the seen and unseen currents of the river.
And we can actually experience glimpses of this integration, this growth in our everyday lives through what Csikszentmihalyi calls flow.
Absolutely. Flow is that state of being completely absorbed in an activity where time seems to vanish, you feel challenged but capable, and you're doing it for the sheer joy of it. Csikszentmihalyi explains that the self becomes complex as a result of experiencing flow.
How so?
Because when we act freely, fully engaged like that, we learn to become more than what we were. We stretch our skills, build confidence, deepen our sense of purpose. It's in those moments of deep, focused engagement that we're not just being carried by the river. We're actively, skillfully navigating it, learning its nuances, shaping its course through our own focused action.
So flow is like active, engaged observation and participation.
You could say that. And this leads to a key point from Csikszentmihalyi about gaining more control. Only if we understand the way subjective states are shaped can we master them. If we learn to manage the information that enters our consciousness, paying attention to what matters, filtering out distractions, we can actually decide what our lives will be like.
It comes back to that observer role again, consciously choosing what gets your attention, what information shapes your inner state,
Okay.
actively curating the content of your own stream.
Exactly. Like a skilled river guide, knowing where to focus attention to navigate safely and effectively.
And this skill isn't just internal, is it? It massively impacts how we connect with others.
Huge impact. The book Attached, which looks at adult attachment styles, really emphasizes effective communication. This is key for everyone, but especially if you tend towards anxious or avoidant patterns in relationships.
What does effective communication look like in that context?
It's about learning to convey your needs clearly and from a place of strength and dignity. Not letting fear or insecurity dictate your communication, which often leads to what they call protest behavior, like withdrawing or acting out, things that push people away instead of bringing them closer.
So it's about clearly stating what you need, even if it feels vulnerable, rather than getting swept away by the emotional currents of fear or anger that lead you to act in ways you regret.
Precisely. And that principle applies internally too, right? Being clear and honest with yourself about your needs and feelings is fundamental to navigating your inner world effectively.
That makes perfect sense. And having the right mindset seems crucial here too. Carol Dweck's work.
Oh, mindset. So powerful. Dweck distinguishes between a fixed mindset, where you believe your abilities are static, set in stone, so failure means you're just not good enough.
Yeah, that feels familiar sometimes.
We all dip into it. But the alternative is the growth mindset, where you see abilities as things you can develop. Failure doesn't mean you're incompetent. It means you need to learn more, practice harder, try a different strategy.
So challenges become opportunities, not threats.
Exactly. Leaders with a growth mindset aren't afraid to confront their weaknesses. They welcome feedback. They see potential in others. It completely reframes how you approach difficulty. Those turbulent rapids in the river. A fixed mindset sees them as proof you can't handle it. A growth mindset sees them as a chance to learn better paddling skills.
It's about believing you can learn to navigate better.
Fundamentally. And this capacity to stay present and learn is vital, especially when dealing with those really strong currents like trauma memories. Van der Kolk emphasizes that a key part of healing is finding a way to become calm and focused.
Getting back to a state of balance.
Yes, and then, crucially, learning to maintain that calm in response to images, thoughts, sounds, or physical sensations that remind you of the past.
That sounds like the absolute essence of being the observer on the riverbank, acknowledging the difficult memory, the whirlpool, without letting it pour you back under.
It really is. It's about building that internal capacity for self-regulation, for presence, proving to yourself that you can witness the difficult currents without being consumed by them. A profound act of regaining self-leadership.
Okay, so we're learning to observe, to regulate, to adopt a growth mindset. How do we make the positive changes stick? How do we build better habits, better currents?
Back to James Clear for a final, crucial piece. His fourth law of behavior change, make it satisfying.
Make it satisfying.
Yeah. To increase the chances you'll repeat a behavior, especially a good habit, find a way to make it feel good immediately. The key is immediate satisfaction. Why immediate? Because our brains evolved in an environment where immediate rewards were critical for survival, finding food, shelter, safety. We're wired for that instant gratification. Modern life, however, is full of delayed returns, saving money, eating healthy, exercising. The big payoff is way down the road.
Right, the long game.
But our ancient brain doesn't care much about the long game. So Clear says if you want a good habit to stick, hack the system. Find a small, immediate reward you can link to it. Track your progress visually, give yourself a little treat, savor the feeling of accomplishment right after you do it.
So you're creating a positive feedback loop now, not just waiting for the distant benefit, making the beneficial currents feel good in the moment.
Exactly. It helps bridge the gap between the action and the delayed reward, making it much more likely you'll choose to steer your river in that positive direction again tomorrow.
Okay, wow. We have covered a lot of ground today. Let's try to pull some threads together in our outro.
Sounds good.
We really journeyed through this incredibly complex inner world, didn't we? Started with that challenging idea of defining consciousness itself, Jung's boiling cauldron view. The idea that unity is something we strive for, not a given.
And William James's crucial image of the stream of thought, always flowing, always changing, with thoughts that are inherently perishing, slipping away the moment we try to grasp them, underscored by that hidden neural machinery working away beneath the surface.
Then we look at the forces driving that stream. Emotions getting there first, as James Clear highlighted, setting the course.
And habits forming these powerful, often automatic, channels, those entrance ramps, guiding almost half our daily actions, often without our awareness.
Plus those internal mechanisms like cognitive dissonance, constantly working to make us feel consistent, even if it means tweaking our perception of reality.
And the huge external forces, Skinner's environmental determinism, the power of social conformity, the tribe shaping what feels attractive or normal to us.
We didn't shy away from the tough stuff, either the inevitability of conflict and suffering that Freud explored, the fragmentation caused by trauma described by Van der Kolk, the anxieties that can shape our reality.
But importantly, we also looked at paths forward. Finding meaning in the struggle, like Frankl showed us, the drive towards self-actualization that Maslow described, and Jung's vision of individuation becoming whole by integrating all parts of ourselves.
And the practical tools, the ways to develop inner resources, experiencing flow to grow the self, using effective communication, cultivating that growth mindset Dweck talks about, learning to calm ourselves like Van der Kolk advises, and making good habits satisfying thanks to Clear.
So the picture that emerges isn't one of a static, easily controlled inner self. It's this dynamic, constantly evolving system, a river. Understanding its complexities, from deep archetypes to conditioned reflexes, from internal conflicts to habit loops, gives us the knowledge we need to navigate it better.
Yeah, the goal isn't to dam the river or stop its flow. You can't, really. It's more about learning to be a better observer, understanding the currents, respecting the power, and then skillfully, consciously, choosing where and how you engage with it, becoming that watcher on the bank.
Well said. It's about cultivating that relationship with your own inner stream.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, here's something to maybe mull over. If our consciousness is more like Jung's desideratum, this sought-after unity in a flowing, fragmented stream, if our thoughts are truly perishing, always moving, what happens when we fully embrace that fluidity? How does accepting the transient nature of this present moment of thought change how we relate to our past regrets or future anxieties? What power might you unlock when you shift from being passively carried by the river to taking an active, mindful role in observing and perhaps gently guiding the information, the focus that defines your inner life?
Maybe the real power, as we've explored, lies precisely in becoming that curious, compassionate observer, rather than feeling like you're constantly just being swept away.
Something to think about. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.